Hi everyone, Lucy here from My Crazy Craft Life, and I am making a couple cards today using the Stamping Bella, Uptown Girl, Opal the Optimist. She has her little bottle of wine there and her wine glass and the cute little dress. Now, one thing, this is a really large, not so much large, but it's a long stamp, so it's almost the entire length of an A2 size card, so 5.5 by 4.25. So make sure you keep that in mind, because you'll see on my second and third card I had a really what I thought was a good idea on what I was going to do for the card, and then I ended up not being able to do it. But I ended up making another card out of it, so it turned out well. But this first one, I stamped the image in Memento Tuxedo Black ink. I colored it with Prismacolor colored pencils. And then I was just kind of piecing together, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I thought maybe that striped background would go, but after I did it, I didn't like that. The paper I'm using is scrap paper. I told you I'm really trying to get through all of my scrap stuff and all of the extra little things I have laying all over the place, so I'm really trying to use those on cards when I'm making them, not getting, extra additional stuff. But because the stamp of the opal is so large, so long, it's kind of hard to put a sentiment, or at least a sentiment that comes with the stamp, onto that card when you're making an A2 size card, like I said. I could have made a larger card, but I didn't want to. I wanted to stay with the A2 size cards. So I cut that out, and then I used my Crop-A-Dile just to crop the edges, and I used some Distress ink in the vintage photo, just to put around the edges of it to give it a little more color and a little more focus, I guess. I was going to put an edge on this, and I tried a couple different things. That white and green paper that is there is actually wallpaper samples. A friend of mine gave me a bunch of scrapbook supplies, and part of it was these samples that she had of the wallpaper, and I just thought it was really cute. I was kind of concerned when I was making this card that it was going to be too Christmassy because it was the red and the green, and I didn't want it, obviously, to be Christmassy, but I think it ended up turning out well. So I was jumping around here trying to figure out what I wanted to do and how I was going to put this sentiment on, and then you see I went back and forth on different papers I was going to use. And I actually really liked that one on the red, but that one I really thought looked Christmassy, so I kind of went against that. In the end, I ended up going back to the original one that I had, so you know what they say, stay with your first instinct. You should probably do that. But anyway, I was going through lots of different ones and lots of different papers trying to figure out exactly what I wanted and how I wanted it to look and what I wanted to do with it. And like I said, I actually ended up going back to the original one, and I tried a lot of different types of pieces and different things with it. I cut out the sentiment a couple times with different dies, and then like this one wouldn't fit on the front of the card with the girl being as long and as wide as she is. I'll have to apologize to you now in case if you hear anything crazy going on in the background. My son is having a game night with his friends, and I am actually locked in my bedroom at the moment so I could get this voiceover done for this blog post because I don't have anywhere else in the house that I can go. My daughter has her friends downstairs, my son has his friends upstairs, and I'm in my bedroom. So anyways, back to the card. But I ended up cutting the sentiment out on a small tag with a small tag die, and then I really liked how that looked, and I thought it was really cute with adding the piece of twine as the bow. Like I said, I went back to my original with a dark green background, the pale white and green wallpaper samples, a red just kind of accent strip, and then the stamp of Opal that was colored in the Prismacolor or pencils, and then the tag with the sentiment on there. And with the tag, I just used a glue dot to put that, just to put that in place. It gave it a little bit of movement so that it can kind of move around a little bit. And then I used some glossy accents on the bottle and the glass and the wine itself. And then I got my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen and put that on all of the roses. And here I was just putting some, like I said, gems that I have from my stash that I want to use up. And those gems are actually kind of the color garnet color, the kind color of the wine kind of, which is what I was going for it to match with that. Now when I was using my sparkle pen, I squeezed it too hard and too much came out, so there was a lot of sparkle on there. And then you see I like to stick my finger in things. Now this is the next card that I'll be making. Actually, I think this is the next card that I make. And if you see that little wine bottle right there, that was actually from a design team post that I did last week from the SugarPea Ooh La La set. That was another stamp that is in that. And you'll kind of see once I get into this card on why it didn't end up working out. What I originally wanted to do was make a shaker card, have Opal on the front of it, have the sentiment inside of the shaker, and I thought that would be really cute. But how I positioned it and the size of the sentiment won't fit into the shaker part along with having her on the outside without covering up part of the sentiment, so I end up having to make a completely different card. But here I'm using some Copic markers to color Opal. I did break down and buy some. I keep hearing everybody and people are telling me that they're really good. I had some before, so I can't say that I've never used them. I had Flesh Tones and a few others that I've used. I am not a good color, so by no means take anything that I am going to say as far as this goes. But I definitely would need more practice because I just personally don't see that much difference with them. And I mean, your better ones, obviously you see a difference with Crayola markers, but with Spectrum Noirs and different ones like that, I just, like I said, I don't. I know everybody is on the big Copic kick and they think they're amazing, and I'm not saying that they're not, but maybe me not being a good colorer would make it why that all doesn't really matter to me. For this one, I wanted to make her dress have a little more color in it, so I wanted to use some yellow. I still left the roses red and with some green for the accents of the leaves in her belt. I gave her brown hair again and gave the wine a little bit of garnet, and the bottle is green, and the tag is a kind of a yellowish, tannish, off-white, I guess you would say. I don't know exactly, but so that's what I was doing with this. Now, like I said, I am by no means an expert with coloring and all of that stuff, and highlights I still don't completely understand. I mean, I understand that highlights, I understand what they are, but I don't understand how to actually get them in there. And I have watched a million videos from coloring, like from Kelly Levelo and other people, and I think they're amazing. But I don't know if it's just I don't have the patience for it, I don't understand it. I'm sure there's just a lot of reasons why it doesn't really make sense to me. But like I said, so this one, I was going to use a red card base or not a card base, but the panel, the front panel, and I cut it out with a scalloped stitched heart die. I have my acetate there I'm putting on. Because like I said, I wanted to make the shaker card. I just used some thin score tape to put that acetate on there. And then some foam tape to pop it up for the shaker portion. And I was trying to keep the sequins kind of centralized within the heart, so I stick some foam tape kind of on the sides of the heart. And I have that all set, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment in the center there. And I originally stamped it with some Champagne Dazzle Versamark ink, and I was going to heat emboss it with gold embossing powder. And yes, back to my same problems from last week of spilling a little, although this time I only spilled a very little bit, but that's okay. But when I heat embossed it, after I guess I should say I heat embossed it, here I was just waiting for my heat gun to heat up, and I was pulling out some sequins and different things. I had a bag of my little clear, kind of like clear enamel dots that spilled, so I was picking those up. But then I stick my finger in it after I heat embossed it when I just got through talking about the same exact thing last week. I need to learn to keep my fingers off things after I heat emboss them. But I found a bunch of the sequins. I have, so many packs of different ones, then colors that kind of match that. And then my brilliant idea there was to pick it up before I taped it down to see how it looked with the sentiment in there, which I'm glad I did because I realized that the sentiment doesn't actually, you can't read it because Opal covers a part of it. So I decided that I can't do that. So anyways, after I stuck my finger on it, I really couldn't do anything. So I took that one sentiment that I had already had and just used that with some double-sided adhesive, and that worked out great. But now in a minute is where you'll see I'm trying to fit the Opal stamp on there, and it just completely covers up part of the sentiment, and I didn't really like that. So I cut her out, and I did the same thing with the crocodile to the edges, and I put some distress ink on the edges of that. But here you see I kind of start another card because I realize, oh, that one's not going to work. So since her dress was yellow, I decided I was going to use some yellow on it, and I wanted some background paper. And I liked this background paper because it was kind of the same color as the wine that was in the glass. So I thought that would be a cute accent. So even though the flowers were red and the leaves were green and her dress was yellow, I thought pulling in that turquoise and then used a piece of paper and just kind of layered that with her. I put the pattern paper on the yellow background or on the yellow card base. And here I was just kind of playing with different things. I thought that green might go because that was the color of the leaves in her dress and her belt, but I just really didn't like that one. But then I decided I was going to just fishtail some kind of banners, I guess, and add those to that. So I get the pattern paper adhered down to the card base. I get Opal adhered to the layering piece that's a turquoise that matches those circles that are in there, and there I was just deciding on how long I actually wanted each of the pieces for the fishtailed banners. And then in a minute here it's going to flip over to making the other card, and I'm not really sure, but I lost some footage of the end of this card and the second card as well. But on here I decided to use foam squares on this panel with Opal on it, and I have no idea why, because I should have just used a roll of foam tape, but I don't know. I guess apparently I just wasn't thinking about it. But for this card, I just adhered the rest of it down. You'll get to see at the end what it actually looks like, because like I said, I lost some of the footage, and I ended up I used some of those clear enamel dots on the bottom of this card as well as a flower. Now here's the SugarPea Ooh La La stamp set that I had used last week, and I'm just going to color in this bottle of wine to put on the first card that I started making with the shaker card. So I just color this with some Copics, and then this is going to cut out and you'll be able to see the pictures of it. So I want to thank everyone for joining me today, and don't forget to head over to Scrapping for Less to grab your stamp sets.